Welcome to the Las Vegasville podcast, brought to you by Jump Studios, where we cover topics related to everything happening around Sin City, including the social media scene, food, and a whole lot more, with some of the best, most popular accounts around the city, and talk about their success in Vegas and beyond. I'm your host, Philip Zhang, aka Las Vegas Phil. Check me out on IG or TikTok, and feel free to text or leave me a voicemail at 702-551-4445. On with the show. Hi, everyone. We've got a different type of show today with a very special guest. By all accounts, the Senate race in Nevada is very important, if not the most important, and could very well decide a huge part of where this country that we all love will go. The outcomes will reverberate locally and nationally and help determine the balance of power in Congress. Nevada's voter registration splits almost evenly among Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated voters like me, according to the Secretary of State's office. And yes, while everyone pretty much solely only knows me as a food content creator, there is so much more to the world than just steak and sushi. I know I'm going to get a lot of backlash for this. I always do when I bring up critical issues in the past, like abortion, the 2020 election, and several other polarizing topics in the past. I lose followers and receive a bunch of ridiculous DMs from people whose mothers would no doubt be ashamed to read, but this is important to me. That's why I'm doing this. Since 2017, Catherine Cortez Masto has served as a senior United States Senator, becoming the first woman elected to represent Nevada in the Senate, and the first ever Latina elected to serve in the upper chamber, period. Prior to that, she was the 32nd Attorney General of Nevada from 2007 to 2014. She has supported many important causes, like her mission to stand up for vulnerable women and girls, leading the fight to break up sex trafficking rings, making it a felony crime, ensuring victims of domestic and sexual violence have the right to sue their captors, and expanding the sex offender registry to protect kids. Since this is a social media show, I always give the count on how many followers the guest has. So with 46K followers on Facebook, nearly 46K on Twitter, and almost 7K on IG, welcome Senator Catherine Cortez Masto to the show.
Well, hello. It's great to join you. Thank you. Do I call you Vegas Phil? Do I call you Phil?
Just call me Phil.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. I know you have a super busy schedule. How are you today?
I am doing, anytime I'm home in my state, which I love, where I grew up here, I'm always happy. It's great to be here. It really is, and to be out and about. And talking to so many people. And by the way, I know a lot of the work you do is promoting, rightfully so, a lot of the food that we have now in our community. It wasn't always that way when I was growing up. So thank you. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's truly my pleasure. But yeah, I mean, even when I moved back here in 2006, there were only maybe 2 ramen stores.
Well, listen, I remember growing up here, what we were known for around food was we were the buffet capital of the world. That's why people came, right? And it's changed a lot. It really has. It's exciting to see it.
Yeah. I mean, we're heading towards the finish line for the campaign. What's your schedule like these days?
You know, we are. November 8th, get out and vote. Votes matter. I tell people it really does at the end of the day. Right now, for me, it's just getting out and talking to Nevadans. Talking about the issues that matter to them, the work that I've done on their behalf in conjunction with them, hearing their voices, bringing those to Washington, turning them into positive action here and resources and good policy that promotes jobs, grows our economy, helps our families, keeps our community safe. It really gives me an opportunity just to get around the state that I love and enjoy, not only talking to individuals and businesses, but enjoying the great outdoors here as well.
Very cool. And besides Vegas and Reno, because that's what most people know Nevada for, are there any parts of Nevada that you've traveled to that you really like and maybe recommend?
I recommend everybody get around the state. Yes, I think it is important. I've traveled all over the state. It's beautiful, and there's so many unique areas of it. What I find fascinating, and I'm third generation here, so I grew up, there are people that have grown up in Las Vegas and never been to other parts of the state, and there are people who've grown up in Reno and never been to other, coming down south. So it's fascinating for me to not only talk to people, but then talk about the beauty of Nevada and what it has to offer. If you like being outdoors, if you like mountain biking or fishing or hiking, or, we have a lot. I grew up in a family of hunters. I had an uncle who regularly, 2 uncles actually, did deer hunting and elk hunting, and my father did that as well. But there's so much Off-roading. I grew up, in communities off-roading as well. So it has a lot to offer, and it's great space. And I love the fact that now, as a senator, I get to help preserve our outdoor recreation, which I know in this state now has provided incredible jobs and has helped to grow our economy as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as you mentioned before, you are third generation in Nevada, born and raised in Las Vegas. You graduated from University of Nevada, Reno, Go Wolfpack. Your roots are deep. I mean, what was it like growing up in Vegas for you? What part of town were you in?
I grew up in southern Nevada, so if I give you the schools or the public schools I went to, it'll give you a sense of the areas I grew up in. I went to Doris Hancock Elementary School, Matt Kelly, and then I went to Cashman Junior High and Clark High School. So I always grew up kind of on the southwest part of town. But it was a smaller community then. I mean, when I was growing up, I want to say in southern Nevada, probably only about 200,000 people. I mean, think about this. When I think for the first 15 years, I remember going to Cashman Junior High, and the major parkway for us was Decatur Boulevard. And then Rainbow was being built. I mean, I just aged myself, I know, but that's what it was like then. That's how small it was.
Yeah, Decatur Boulevard was actually the last street on the west side for a long time.
That's correct. Yeah, that's right.
Unbelievable. While my overall political views run blue, a big commonality for us is food. That's a big reason why your team initially reached out to me. What are some of your favorite restaurants in the city?
Oh my gosh, there's too many, and you're going to get me in trouble by identifying them. But I will say this. Let me just say a couple of things. I am half Italian, half Mexican. So for the first, I want to say, until I went to college, for when I was younger, I really didn't go out to a Mexican or Italian restaurant because I got the best food at home. Right? My mother and my grandmothers both were great cooks, and I had a grandfather who was a baker. But now, because Las Vegas in particular, we're seeing this change in northern Nevada and Reno as well. There's these great new food places and restaurants to go to. Tacos El Gordo is one of them. Yep. I'm very a fan of theirs. There is a Arepa Express. That is a good one I like to go to. Cafe del Manila, I was just there. Great Filipino food. I like to try them all. There are so many. There's a staple, though, if you don't know, that has been here a long time, and I get there as much as I possibly can. It's called Vicky's Diner. And it was when I was growing up, it was in the old, it's not there anymore, it was a White Cross drug store downtown. Then they actually closed that down, and Vicky's Diner and the family, who are from here, moved it over to Commercial Center. It's a great local place as well.
Yeah, it's been a while since I checked it out, but yeah. For sure, a legendary one. What about some of the all-time favorite ones, old school ones that you wish maybe were still around? Ones that you missed?
Oh my goodness. Well, I can't say there's any that I wish were still. There's still a lot because let me just give you an example. I said I literally grew up right around Cashman and Clark High School. It is now a beautifully diverse Asian community with so many incredible restaurants. I didn't grow up with that. Didn't look anything like that. So now I get the opportunity just to try them out, and I think everybody should. There's some wonderful restaurants there. And, I will say this because I know a lot of locals, there's some great dining on the Strip. We all know it. There's Barry's Steakhouse downtown, which actually I've discovered. I actually really like Barry's Steakhouse. My husband and I both do. We actually had our anniversary. We had our anniversary dinner there just recently.
Great place to celebrate. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I moved here in 2006, and in my mind, Vegas just keeps getting better. It's mind-blowing to think about what has come up, but I'd love to hear maybe some of your perspective, since you've seen so many of the changes and been part of that as well, from even 15, 20 years ago to now, and what's coming up. I mean, what do you foresee in the future?
For purposes of Nevada and our future? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Listen, let me just say this. We are primed now, but just the growth in this community is incredible at so many levels, and the opportunities. I've worked really hard to ensure that not only are we leaning into this clean energy future and economy, because we are primed for it with solar and wind and geothermal, and we have now electric charging stations throughout the state. I mean, most people don't know this. When I say in Nevada, if you have an electric vehicle and you go to Lovelock, Nevada, where most people don't even know where it is,
right,
there's a charging station there for your vehicle. And we have done some incredible things of making investments in that clean energy and helping us reduce our carbon footprint. People don't, and I love to talk about this because people don't realize we have some great entrepreneurs in this space. There's a company here in Reno that is actually taking land out of the landfill, trash out of the landfill in northern Nevada, and then taking it and processing it with their patent and their unique process and turning it into clean burning aviation fuel. That's incredible, right?
That is incredible.
And I've been working with them the last 5 years to get the EPA to finally give them the license they need for their biointermediate, what they're doing, and now they're moving forward. That's the unique thing about Nevada, which I love. But there's still other great opportunities. I just left Pitney Bowes, which is brand new warehouse processing facility for our mail. And they are doing shipping and logistics in conjunction with the Postal Service. And they employ over 300 people here. And they're already looking at expanding. Because now we are providing the shipping distribution center and kind of diversified our revenue, not just being around hospitality and trade shows and conventions, which I believe we are the gold standard, as you well know. And I had a father who worked in the industry and so many families that worked in the industry, but we need to diversify from that at times when we have a downturn in our economy and we see the impact here. So that diversification is happening. I get to support it every single day in the Senate through tech manufacturing and distribution and logistics and this really kind of clean energy economy, smart transportation, smart communities that we have the ability now to take advantage of in this state.
Amazing. Yeah, climate change is real. Anyone doubting this to me is being completely ridiculous. The state has had many challenges with drought and wildfires, which keep getting worse and worse. Senator, could you talk a little bit about what you've done to try to turn this around?
Absolutely. This, to me, clearly, anybody who lives in the West knows climate change is real. I mean, you just walk outside and you can either see the fires or smell them, and they are growing hotter and longer. And it's not just in our forests, it's in our rangelands that we have a lot of in northern Nevada. Or you deal with an understanding that we have to conserve our water because it is precious and there is a drought. So knowing and just being a Westerner, one of the areas that I focused on, which was important for me, is to be on the Committee of Energy and Natural Resources for the Senate. Because this is an area I wanted to work on, knowing and growing up here. So I've been able to really address how we bring essential resources to not only fight those fires, but invest in the technology that helps us fight the fires, but also prepare for these hotter and longer fires, and then restore the environment afterwards. But one of the things we have to do in this state is actually reduce the fuels that actually contribute to the fires. In Nevada, there's a lot of cheatgrass. So we have to reduce that. So I fought for about $8 billion that went into the bipartisan infrastructure package just around Western states and how we fight these fires in a smart way and give our men and women that fight these fires the tools they need and the resources they need to do so. And then drought. Oh, my goodness. Anybody just has to see Lake Mead, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. I was just there last night in Boulder City at an event, and I stopped down because I wanted to see the bighorn sheep. If anybody knows there's bighorn sheep around that area, you go down there and check, see if you can see them. I was looking at Lake Mead. The level was so low in an area where I had learned to scuba dive. I would not have been able to scuba dive there now. And that's how low. There's islands coming out that did not exist there before. And so it shows you it's real. It's not going away. And so we have to manage the drought. And that's why on Energy and Natural Resources Committee that I sit on, I pushed through it's called the DCP, and it is a drought preparation contingency plan that all of the basin states along the Colorado River had to implement because of the drought. Nevada is primed in a really good position to manage and prepare for the drought. There's more we have to do, but because we have the least amount of water that comes off the Colorado River, it's about 300,000 acre-feet of water that we get out of about 15 million acre-feet of water, we've really had to conserve. So we in Nevada only take in southern Nevada 240,000 acre feet of water. And even with the two-tier restrictions that have been placed upon us because of the drought, we're not even hitting those restrictions because we have done a great job of conservation. Anybody knows if you have a lawn, you take it up, right? Because that takes up a lot of water.
Yep.
The gray water, or everything that comes through the sinks and you flush your toilet, all that is gray water, goes back, goes back into Lake Mead. We get credits for it. So we've done a really good job around conservation and reuse. Now we need the other states along the Colorado River to do the same thing. And that's why in the Inflation Reduction Act, there's an additional $4 billion I fought for that will go to states if they look at how they are actually using less water along the Colorado River. And I don't know if you saw it. Yesterday was the first time we saw California has said we're going to use 10% less water off the Colorado River, but we want access to some of that money to help us address some of the issues and help us understand how we limit our use of water. That was the intent. That's what we're doing. We all have to work together here to address the drought.
Absolutely. In Congress, you've also been a very strong advocate for women and children and worked to pass legislation to strengthen women's health care. You're a co-sponsor of the Women's Health Protection Act and to guarantee equal access to abortion everywhere. Pro-choice is one of the biggest issues. Women's reproductive rights are under attack like never before. It is mind-blowing to me in 2022, Roe versus Wade ever got overturned by the Supreme Court. I mean, you'd think that time has progressed as we as people would progress, but in so many ways, it's like a lot of people turn back into the dark ages.
Well, it's crazy to me even think about it in this terms. I think this is the first time in my lifetime where I have seen the United States Supreme Court issue a decision that takes away the rights of half the people of the United States. I mean, it's outrageous to me. It was a concerted effort by some in Congress to actually stack the court so that they would do that, even though they claim they weren't doing it. I know right now there are young girls that are waking up with less rights than their mothers or grandmothers had. We've lived with Roe versus Wade and the right for women to make these decisions about their health care for the last almost 50 years, and that has been taken away. And it is outrageous to me. On the day that Roe was repealed by the Supreme Court, my mother, who is still alive, thank God, and my sister were texting with one another. Like, can you believe this? This is outrageous. And what we see now is they're not content on just repealing it and claiming they want to give it to state elected representatives to decide what women can or can't do. Now they have passed, or are looking to pass, federal abortion bans that would literally stop states like ours that have made the decision through a voter initiative to allow women the right and the decision to make these choices. I'm proud of Nevada. In the 90s, there were a group of progressive women that came forward and said, you know what, we want to codify Roe versus Wade in our statute. We want to make it a referendum so the voters can choose if they want to do this. And they did. At that time, 2/3 of the voters in Nevada chose Roe versus Wade. And that's why we are a pro-choice state. And if there's a federal abortion ban, like Lindsey Graham had introduced one, that would have been much stricter and it would have preempted our state law. And that's their intent. And so, to me, this is a time for so many to come out. I've heard from so many women and men, rightfully so, about their concerns here. And I just, to some of my colleagues who just disagree and are trying to restrict these rights, including some that are running for office in this state, I say, well, my biggest question to them is, why don't you trust women? Why don't you trust women to make this decision? And by the way, what happened to equal protection under the law and the right of women to make healthcare decisions based on their needs at the time and their doctors and being in the room and whoever their loved ones are? And this idea that we impose our beliefs, our backgrounds, our experiences on other people is just ridiculous to me. I don't know what it's like to walk on another woman's shoes. I don't know what she's going to deal with, so I want her to have to make that decision on her own, which is good, the best decision for her based on the medical science and the doctors and the people around her. I would never want to take that away from her. And I don't think anybody should do that.
Absolutely not. How it's even possible to be against abortion from sexual assault and other unspeakable horrors is beyond me. What needs to be done so that future generations of women and families have freedoms as they always had before?
A number of things. Yeah, I think everybody needs to come out now more than ever. Elections do matter. This is an election where we have individuals are running to take away and restrict a woman's right to choose. Nevada's law is not safe, as I've said, that many are claiming. If there's a federal abortion ban that many want to implement, it would restrict and take away our rights in this state and in this country when it comes to reproductive freedom. So I think it matters who you vote for. Pro-choice candidates that understand this idea that it's a right of a woman to make this decision. It is important. I introduced on the floor of the Senate a piece of legislation, you just talked about it, that would allow a woman to travel from a state that has restricted her right to make this decision and come to Nevada for her health care needs because there were states that were criminalizing her if she wanted to do so. And so I introduced legislation to say, no, we're not going to make it. We're going to make sure she's free from any criminal penalties. And we're also going to protect our doctors who want to provide those services because the states were trying to criminalize our doctors as well. I offered it on the floor of the Senate thinking, oh my gosh, this is an easy issue. Everybody should be about states' rights and allowing women to travel freely for their needs, their health care needs. The Republicans on the floor of the Senate objected to it. So it just shows you there's so much at stake right now, and it is important for people to pay attention to really what's going on because elections do matter at the end of the day.
Absolutely. We're also just 5 years past 1 October. You played a vital part in co-sponsoring a bill to ban bump stocks, which was really a great start toward decreasing gun violence and mass shootings. What more needs to be done for people to feel safer? Because I was at Lovers and Friends, the festival where the fake stampede happened, where people just started freaking out. The one a couple months back where half the strip was kind of in fear of a shooter that wasn't present. But what do you think needs to be done to have people feel safer?
Well, I tell you, I was just at the October 1 remembrance at the Healing Garden last Saturday night, and I try to attend it every year. I think it is important, number one, that we have to understand this is having a major impact. Gun violence across the country on so many individuals. It becomes personal for people. The October 1 incident that happened here, the horrific tragedy, we lost 58 people, 60 altogether, so many others that were injured, both physically and mentally. My niece was there.
Oh, wow.
I don't know anybody in this community that didn't have somebody they knew or a loved one there. And there were so many that traveled for that concert that were also injured. And so I remember rushing home, going to the reunification center that night, and there were families in that center waiting to hear about their loved one because they had checked all the hospitals and they were waiting to hear from the hospitals if their loved one was there, or they were waiting to hear from the coroner who was in the back come forward to say, your loved one is here. I mean, it was I can't even imagine families going through that and being there with them and seeing the grief and the sorrow and the concern and the fear on their faces. It just brought home, I think, for me and so many others that we have to reduce gun violence. There are responsible gun owners across this country and in this state that also agree that we have to reduce gun violence. Listen, I just said I grew up in a family that hunted. I'm married to a retired Secret Service agent. I'm a former prosecutor. We are around guns, but there's a responsible way to own them and use them. And I think there are many gun owners that feel that way, that we also all want to reduce gun violence. So I am so proud in Nevada that we actually passed universal background checks, that we have extreme risk laws, we call them the red flag laws, to make sure we're keeping guns out of the hands of people that shouldn't have them, criminals. And we are looking at, areas where we can continue to focus on reducing gun violence. We've done some of that at the federal level, like you said, with bump stocks. And then just recently, we passed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. And that was the first step at a federal level, bringing some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle together to say, No, this is really this is a major issue. We've got to stop this violence. Young kids sitting at their desk with their baby teeth being killed. Outrageous. How can anybody think that that's okay and not want to try to do something about it? So in the Safer Communities Act, that's the first step. Is there more to be done? Absolutely. But it's the first step that we've come together to really reduce gun violence and focus on, in that case, how we bring more background checks and enhanced review of anybody who is under the age of 21 trying to purchase a gun. We address the gun show loopholes. We address the straw buyers and more criminal penalties against them. We close through the Violence Against Women Act, the boyfriend loophole that ensures that if you're in a dating relationship and there's violence with guns, that individual should be held accountable for that and not be able to utilize or access guns in the future. So there's a number of things we've done, including address the mental health piece of it and putting more money, about $1 billion, into keeping our schools safe and safer. But yes, more needs to be done. And I think we all have a role to play at a federal, at a state level, a local, and working together just in our community. I mean, I go back to October 1. There were so many people there from all walks of life. Some law enforcement, right? Some in private sector, but they were from all walks of life. And they were there because we all experienced what happened on October 1. And I was so proud of our community because we all came together to support one another and help one another on that night and those days afterward. And I don't think this community will ever forget. And that's why it is important for us to come together and continue to really reduce gun violence where we can.
Yeah. I can't stress enough the importance of voting. It's imperative that anyone of age that should do this. I worked at a resort back in 2016, and the day after you-know-who was elected, I was stunned to find out how many young people working at the resort didn't even bother to vote. And that drove me crazy. What kind of steps have you taken to reach out to the younger audience?
Yeah, let me just say, because I hear quite often from folks that say, oh, well, my vote doesn't matter. But it does. Let me just say, here in Nevada, elections are very close.
Yeah.
There are some elections that have been won by just a few votes or 400 votes, so they do matter here in Nevada. And I think everybody should turn out to vote, including, as you say, the younger population. It could be my kids and my nieces and nephews, and I talk to them about it. We talk about the issues. And I think what I'm finding is it's not about party affiliation for them. It's about the issues, rightfully so. It is about finding individuals that care about the issues that they care about. And I think that is important. That's the first step in that outreach and having these conversations. I'm actually leaving here and going to another high school to talk to some of our students. And I talk to our students on college campuses, and I just get around and talk to them about what matters to them and how we can work together to address their future and their issues, to make sure that I know I'm fighting for them. I'm their voice in Washington. I'm their senator. I want them to know that, and what they say and what they care about matters to me, because I feel so strongly that as I represent them, this is what it's about. I got to hear from them. And then I take their voices to Washington, turn it into whether it's legislation or policy that's important for us. I bring it back here, and then I tell them so that we can work to access those funds or make sure that we can work together to promote the policy here and get it done. And the first step to me are those great conversations. A few days ago, I was at one of our high schools. I was actually at two of our other high schools. But one of the high schools, I had an auditorium filled with students from the government class. There had to have been at least 250 students. Wow. I have to tell you, the questions I got from them were better than some of the questions that I've heard from some of my colleagues in the Senate ask. They were so engaged and intelligent and talking about issues that I know that they cared about for their future. So that gives me hope. It really does. That they are going to come out, they're going to vote based on what they care about and align themselves with people that are actually fighting for them, those electeds that are fighting for those same things.
Wow. What's the most fulfilling aspect of being a senator?
Other than that, just getting out and talking to everybody and hearing from them, getting hope from the younger generation. You touched on some of it. The work that I had done here as Attorney General, on sex trafficking prevention and creating the law of sex trafficking in this state was just fulfilling to me on so many levels. But I carried that with me to the Senate. I knew working in this community with our tribal communities, there's 28 tribal communities in Nevada. Most people don't realize this. And they are challenged in accessing federal resources, but also bringing attention to the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and children. So when I got to the Senate, I wanted to be on the committee that oversees Senate Indian Affairs so that I could work on this issue. And I was able to, with one of my colleagues, Lisa Murkowski, who, by the way, I believe in bipartisanship and working together and trying to figure out how we could get things done. And we were able to pass Savannah's Act and Not Invisible Act to really focus on this issue and require our federal partners to come to the table with our tribal communities to really capture the data on what's happening so that we can actually turn it into action and programming and enforcement to prevent this from happening. I just introduced the Badges Act that will give our tribal law enforcement access to some of the federal databases to help them address this issue. So to me, I get to do that type of work that I love and have been involved in for so long. And I think that's part of why I enjoy the job so much as well.
Phenomenal. Senator, we've about wrapped up the episode. And again, thanks for being a guest. Any final thoughts or anything? Well, obviously, vote.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Yes, I would say anybody get out and vote. If you're interested in getting engaged, you want to reach out to my office, CatherineCortezMasto.com. Reach out to my campaign. We'll get you involved. Door knocking. We're knocking on doors now. We're canvassing the neighborhoods, talking to voters. If anybody's interested, please reach out again. It's CatherineCortezMasto.com. And what a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thanks for taking the time out to do this. Yeah. Till next episode, thanks for checking in. Thanks for tuning in to the Las Vegasville podcast. For more information about me and where I've been dining recently, check out my IG and TikTok at Las Vegasville. Feel free to text or leave me a voicemail about anything you want, 702-551-4445. Stay tuned as a new episode of the show debuts every Monday morning.